All right. So I guess nobody heard I talked about looking for a bounce back to 59.75 and for us to roll over there. I was caught up just prepping for the piece with Carmine, so I didn't get a trade out there, but hopefully the volume was working for that and some folks got involved. But obviously 59.40 set up as a key support level there. 59.50, a lot of action going on around that level, and that's kind of the backdrop that we got going on as Carmine comes in here. And Carmine, a lot of the issues that we are seeing are emanating from geopolitical concerns, certainly around tariffs. So we're going to be discussing that today. I guess the first question I have for you is, how was your weekend? Were you at the card table? And how many people told you that you don't have the cards when you were trying to
Only,
raise the ante on them?
well, I actually one person did tell me.
Only one.
I don't. Only one did tell me, Carmine, you don't have the cards. I did.
I'm surprised. I would have thought that would have been the number one line heard at poker tables around the country this weekend.
Oh, it probably was. I only heard it from one particular person myself, but it just depends on what situation you get into, if it's relevant or not. But but yeah, but I did actually have it that time. So, and I
Okay.
called and I told him I'm not Zelensky.
How are the tables? Still busy? People still spending their refunds?
Yeah, they're still very busy. I expect this is like the golden time between February and Memorial Day, and then once the weather warms up, it kind of gets a little cold or gets a little slower. But right now, things are going good.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good knowing what folks are doing with their disposable income there. So, all right, Carmen. So, we're obviously going to touch upon that Zelensky discussion here, but we're just going to go in order of your notes, just to kind of keep things uniformed and allow you to provide your thoughts. And the first thing we're going to be discussing is government funding, which we're not all that far away from March 14th. I always feel like March creeps up, the Ides of March creeps up on us a little bit quicker, just because of how short February is, of course. But where do we stand right now with those funding negotiations ahead of the March 14th deadline?
Yeah, so House Speaker Mike Johnson was on Meet the Press over the weekend, and he said he wanted a clean CR through September 30th. So he said that the DOGE savings will be incorporated in the next bill that they do in September. So for the next fiscal year 26, which is in September, they negotiate. So the Democrats are saying that they want some restrictions on what DOGE can do and the specific powers that they think that Trump's overstating his authority in a lot of places. They want some restrictions put into the bill for that. So this is going to be the battle. Right now, I think they're kind of at a stalemate, but at least there's the clean CR out there. If there's any good news, it's that Johnson didn't attach anything to his CR for this time. But the Democrats do kind of want some attachments of their own as far as restrictions on DOGE and restrictions on some of the things that the president can do. So we'll see how this works out. Right now, I think the odds are over 50% that there will be a government shutdown. And just so for people that haven't been with us the entire time, over the last couple of years, I've been, railing against, the media. They always come out and say there's going to be a shutdown, there's going to be a shutdown, there's going to be a shutdown. And I've been saying for the last 2 years it's not going to happen. And I've been right about that. But this time I think it's different because of the structure in Congress. And, it sounds kind of. It sounds kind of silly when you think of it this way, but this is kind of how politics works, right? The Democrats feel like Republicans control all three branches of government, so they're going to get the blame if there's a shutdown, right? And if before, when President Biden was in office, it could have been either way, kind of who gets the blame. So the Democrats kind of, I think, have a much more leverage now to try to get things that they want because the Republicans will get the blame if there is a shutdown. So and
Any
for
polls out on that, Carmine, out of curiosity?
I haven't seen any yet. The polls, there are several polls out over the weekend, but not asking that particular question. It's about Trump's approval rating. CBS has him at 51. CNN had him at 48. A couple others had him in the high 40s as well. So the country's really split as far as his performance in the last 3 months. So it would probably be somewhere along those lines if they polled that particular question. But the bottom line is it does need 60 votes in the Senate. So if, let's say, for example, Johnson's able to get that clean CR through his conference, that puts the ball in the court of the Senate, right? And they're saying, okay, if all the Republicans in the Senate vote for it, then the Republicans can easily say that the government shut down because we didn't get 60 Democrats. But if there's not enough unity within the Republican Party to pass that CR, and they need and it doesn't even pass the House, then that's when they're going to have to keep crawling over to the Democrats to try to get some votes. But those votes are going to come at a cost. They're going to want, like I said, restrictions on DOGE and everything else. So that's kind of like the big what to watch here. If Johnson can get that CR through his conference or through the House, um,
And that's just a majority vote,
just the majority vote in the House, yeah,
where
and
the Senate's 60.
yeah, the Senate is 60. So if he can get
Yeah,
that
so
through the
that's a key
House, yeah,
differentiator there.
yeah, exactly. So if he can get that through the House, with only Republican votes and maybe a few Democrats, then the ball's in the Senate's court, and I think they'll be far less likely to say, okay, we're going to shut the government down, because at that point, like I said, they could say, okay, we didn't get 60 because of the Democrats. We held our people together, but I think it's what's more likely to happen is that there's about 40, 50 budget hawks that won't vote for any continuing resolutions without cuts, and I think that's going to be the most likely scenario is that it fails, and then they don't have to come crawling to the Democrats for votes, and that's where it's going to get dicey, and that's where the negotiations are going to get a little heated between both sides.
Okay, one of the interesting aspects you brought up on that was the DOGE savings. Um, do we have any numbers on that? Who's scoring that? Is the CBO scoring that, or
Yeah. So
are we just waiting for Elon Musk to say, "Yeah, we saved this much"? Everybody just kind
well,
of trusts that number.
so yeah, they could say whatever they want, but there's the actual scorekeeper is going to be the CEO, CBO. So I'm sure the White House will put out their own numbers, and then what's going to happen is that the CBO will say, okay, this is what it actually is. I'm not saying that they're going to be distrustful. I'm just saying that both parties typically kind of overstate things in favor of them, and then the CBO comes back with reality and says, okay, this is what it really is. So I expect that to happen, but that's something that, according to Johnson, won't be dealt with until the fall. So we have a lot of time on that.
Assuming the CR gets done.
Yeah, assuming the CR gets done. Assuming the CR gets done. Right now, I think there's going to be a shutdown. It probably won't be a long one, but I think there's going to be a shutdown. But but there's still, I think, there's still a good chance that they come to terms, and see what they can do. But right now, if I was betting, I would say there would be a shutdown.
So don't make any plans to go to the national parks around St. Patty's Day, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
Because
Uh,
they're the first
well,
things that
one
get
of the
shut down, right?
yeah, well, so one of the interesting things is that the Office of Management and Budget, the gentleman that I forget the guy's name, the Trump appointee that's running that, kind of gets the authority to say what is impacted by a shutdown, what's not, right? What's essential and what's not. So he could pick some things that are not essential, and this is where the Democrats might have to kind of tread a little careful here, because there was this political report that kind of laid this out, where the OMB director could say, you know what I think is not essential is foreign aid, or a lot of this other stuff that the Democrats want in the budget. I'm going to say, oh, that's not essential. So that's kind of where things could get really dicey if they go down that route. But we'll see. But there was a political report a couple weeks ago that they could actually do that. So we'll see how that. But that's something that, of course, will get litigated in the courts as well. So
Okay. Now, with that clean resolution there, the House did pass a large reconciliation bill, right? So, number one, I'm curious to hear some of the things that are involved with that. Number two, does that kind of foreshadow their ability to get through the CR?
it might. I think it helps a little that they were able to get that votes by votes in the House enough for that. Uh, but this is for Trump's agenda, right? It's separate than the government funding. This is going to be what this includes is tax cuts, extending the 2017 tax cuts, various spending cuts. I think it's about 800 billion in spending cuts over 10 years, which again is not going to offset the 4.5 trillion from the tax cuts, but it's better than nothing. So also have some immigration funding in there for the border and some energy permitting reforms to unlock more oil drilling and so forth. A defense money for defense and a debt ceiling increase. So everything is in that one big beautiful bill, as they call it. Uh, the bill, if it were to pass in this current form, would be negative for kind of the insurance stocks and the hospital stocks because of the Medicaid cuts. Now, there's going to be a big debate about this because the Republicans are going to call this waste, fraud, and abuse, right? They were saying, well, we're not really cutting any Medicaid per se. We're just getting rid of the fraud and the abuse. And the Democrats are going to say you guys are hurting people that are on a low incomes that are in that reliable on Medicaid. But the bottom line is that whatever category you think it is in, depending on what side of the political aisle you're on, it's going to hurt those hospital stocks. Even if it's waste, it's sort of called, even if it's waste and fraud, that waste and fraud was going to the hospitals anyway. So it's going to hurt those stocks regardless of whether you call it waste or fraud or if you call it hurting the average little guy. So that's going to be negative for those stocks if this bill does pass in its current form. The hospital stocks like MOH and CI and THC. CYH and HCA and so forth. So keep an eye on those. But here's the thing with this though. So it passed the House, and so the Senate wants to make some changes. They want the tax cuts to be permanent. Now, the way they want to do that is they want to say, but in order to make the tax cuts permanent, it's going to be a much larger number than the 4.5 trillion that it was calculated before, right? So the way they're going to do that is they're going to say this is a current policy baseline. So in their mind, this will be scored at zero cost because it's already current policy and you're just extending current policy. Now, the CBO is not going to think of it that way, but that's how the Republicans are going to think about it when they sell it. So uh, that's probably how they're going to do this. I think this is going to go back and forth a few more times before it gets passed, but I do eventually think that it will get passed sometime this summer, and we'll have all these tax cuts and immigration and energy signed in by law by the president. But I think it's Johnson again said April 1st. I think that's way too optimistic. I think it's going to be sometime in the summertime before the August recess. It would be my guess as to when they get this negotiated and get it done.
Okay. Defense, that's one area that could be a winner, right? We've been talking a lot
Yeah,
about
defense could be a winner.
names looking a
That
little
it was
cheaper on those
increases defense by
pullbacks.
$100 million. So yeah, so this is it could be a winner there. It's interesting that they're doing that because kind of Pete Hitzik, a couple weeks ago, kind of foreshadowed the opposite. So this is something that might, be taken out or changed a little bit too. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. As far as what goes on with that, but there's a lot of things that can switch around. But right now, that's the bill in its current form.
Okay. So moving on, Carmine, arguably the biggest question for market participants today is when we wake up tomorrow, will there be a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico and a 10% tariff on China? Uh, where do things stand with that? Um, how easy is it to get off that runway from going down that road at the moment? Where do you see things on that front?
Yeah, so this is the way I see this. So we're going to talk about this in a minute, but Trump's giving the State of the Union tomorrow. Whenever it's the first year, I mean, this is technically a second term, but it's the first year of the because he ran non-consecutive terms. It's technically his first year of his beginning term. So they call it a joint address to Congress. Whereas if he was elected in consecutive terms, they would call it a State of the Union. But whatever they're calling it, it's the same thing. He's giving the State of the Union tonight. I mean, sorry, tomorrow night, and I think he's going to want to stand up there and say, "Hey, I got this solved. I got all these concessions, Mexico and Canada. Look at me, and look at all this great stuff that we're going to get because of I played hardball." I think that's what he's going to. I think he really wants to be able to say that tomorrow night. So my guess right now is if the tariffs do go on at midnight, they come off very quickly before that address when it's, some deal is reached. But that's my guess right now. Is that you said by Tuesday Tuesday or tonight at midnight will they go on? I'm more comfortable saying by Wednesday morning they will not be on, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah,
So is there an official time frame when it does go on? Like, I mean, is the
it's supposed to be
clock strike
midnight.
midnight tonight?
Yeah, it's supposed to be midnight
Okay.
tonight. So, obviously, I don't think they're going to be negotiating at that time of the night. So that's why I'm saying that it could go on for a day, but then I feel like there's some type of deal will be reached where they come off that same day before he gives the State of the Union address, and he kind of tout that. I feel like that's
Okay,
what I
we'll be
feel like is
looking at
going to happen right now.
yeah. China, you don't think that there's any way that he backs off on the China
No, no, I
tariffs,
don't.
right?
The China tariffs, I think, are going on. Uh, the so that's actually one of the ones that are more, for whatever reason, are more popular than the tariffing China it was polling over 50% in the CBS poll. Tariffing Canada and Mexico
What's a Poland and can yeah, what's Poland
Canada
there?
and Mexico was pulling in the high 30s. So it's a pretty big
Okay.
difference. The Canada and Mexico tariffs are pretty unpopular, but the China tariffs, I mean, I wouldn't call them the most popular policy in the world, but they're at least a little above water. So so that's kind of I think that's kind of ways thinking on that. Also, if you, Scott Bessent was on Face the Nation over the weekend, the Sunday show on CBS, and he was talking about this deal where Mexico offered to tariff China on their imports and match what the U.S. is doing. So let's say the U.S. goes up to 20%. Mexico would head down to 20% tariff on Chinese goods coming into Mexico. So Bessent was saying he's negotiating with Canada to try to get the same thing. So that's kind of like when I heard that, I heard it kind of perked up. My ears kind of perked up. I'm like, "Ooh, that might be a way out of it." I mean, that's kind of really out of the box thinking by Mexico there. I really kind of give them a little kudos there because I think that's something that Trump would like. If all three of these countries are kind of going after China all together, I think that's something that he would like. And also, if they kind of make some pledges that they're going to buy goods from U.S. and not China, they're going to buy, they're going to do something with fentanyl. Canada really doesn't have that much fentanyl. The fentanyl problem is vastly on the Mexican side, right? I mean, it's like it's night and day. I mean, there's tons and tons of fentanyl coming across that southern border, at least over the last 4 years. It might not over the last few couple months, but the last few years there was a lot. It's barely any out of the northern border. So that's something that Mexico's going to have to deal with as well, as far as come to a deal. But like I said, I do think there'll be by Wednesday morning. I don't think there'll be tariffs.
Did I hear something over the weekend that lumber was going to be taken off that tariff
Yeah,
list?
so he launched a USTR investigation into lumber. That could result in a couple of tariffs against lumber imports. So keep an eye on the paper stocks like IP, for example, on that. If they do kind of the USTR is going to come back with a report, and then if they recommend tariffs on lumber imports, that's something that he probably would go with. It would be a negative for IP and Weyerhaeuser, uh, WY as well. BCC is a paper stock too. So all that lumber obviously is an input for paper. So this is more of a Canadian thing because there's a lot of Canadian imports of lumber. So that's kind of what he's targeting there. So, but that's something that they're going to do an investigation on a 232 trade investigation, and they're going to come back at some later date. They didn't say when, but some later date with a report and a study about what they recommend.
All right, so we'll keep an eye out on that. The reciprocal tariffs, Carmine, where do we stand on those?
Yeah, the reciprocal tariffs. So we need. I think we need a little tariff calendar to keep this all straight. But that's,
We do.
but the reciprocal tariffs are due to go into effect on April 2nd. Uh, the, so this includes, basically matching what the other country's tariff on the U.S. So let's say the EU tariffs Toyota Priuses when they come over to the EU at 10%. That means their Volkswagens will also be tariffed at 10% as well. So that's kind of what that means. It's basically matching the tariff, uh, good, not no more nor less than what the tariffs are. That's going to be a report that gets delivered on actually gets delivered on April 1st. But the president said he didn't want to be super. He didn't want to do it on April 1st because that was April Fool's Day. So he's going to do it on April 2nd. So that we'll have to keep an eye on that. There's a lot of moving parts to this as well because if you look at the EU obviously has a pretty good industry of finding U.S. technology companies, and this is something that really gets under the skin of the president. So uh, they this is something that will be part of the negotiations as well.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye out on those. Let's see. Anything else on the tariff front then, Carmine, before we move on here?
That's pretty much it.
All right, let's talk about the Zelensky Trump presser on Friday.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of people never seen that for sure. It goes on behind closed doors, but never been in an office, or never been in front of the press. So, just kind of curious as to your thoughts on it and the fallout there. I'm not asking you to point. Who do you see as the aggressor at all or anything like that, but just pulling back and looking at from a political point of view, where do you think we go from here on that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think the peace deal is, on pretty much life support. I mean, I thought there was a pretty good chance, but I think they're gonna have to, get on good terms with each other again, which could happen. I mean, Zelensky's made some comments over the weekend saying that he wants to sign the deal, the minerals deal, and I think if he signs that, I think he might, get a little, in a better place in Trump's mind to kind of pursue things. After this, I think that that the minerals deal. Trump's probably not going to invite him back to the White House again for the minerals deal. He's probably going to have to sign that in Ukraine and send it over here. And if you were able to do that, I think that maybe the peace deal might be back on track for the next few months. But I think it's going to take a lot longer now than we initially thought. If you look at Europe, they had meetings over the weekend as well, saying that they want to, support Ukraine. UK offered some boots on the ground. They offered $2 billion. I mean that's really a fraction of what the U.S. has made. Trump likes to say 350. That number is including a lot of other things that are not officially what the DOD puts it at. The DOD puts it at 178 billion for U.S. support. So that's the actual factual number there, but it's still a big difference from what the big difference there as far as what the U.S. It's still a lot of money for the U.S. I should say, and so that's kind of what Trump doesn't like, and in the meeting, of course, he basically said, Zelensky was saying that he needs security guarantees and he wants, a portion of the land back, and some of those things I think are just going to be unacceptable to the president. So, if Europe can provide those security guarantees, it kind of takes it off uh, the U.S.'s plate, so to speak. And I think that's something uh, that's something that the president can support. But I think that's going to be a long way off, and this is going to be something that's probably next year we'll still be talking about it.
Well, I guess that's one question I have for you, Carmine, in terms of Europe guaranteeing a security deal. What you're talking about there, part of that security deal sounded like recapturing some lost land. Um,
Yeah,
Securing the land that they currently have is a lot different than securing land that they lost, right? So,
right.
are you telling me that Europe's willing to go in militarily
No,
to
no, no, no,
reclaim
no.
that land? Yeah,
No, no, I don't think so. I don't think they're willing to
I
do that.
don't think so either. That's why I'm
Yeah,
just trying to figure
yeah,
out
yeah.
what you meant
But
by.
the reason why I mentioned the land was that Zelensky wants the U.S. to try to take back some, or he wants some of the land that Russia took already, given back to him, right? And that's I think that's pretty much off the table, that demand. But his second demand, I think, is a little bit more reasonable, that there will be security guarantees. But I think that's something that Europe is going to have to do. And if Europe could present a plan to the president, saying President Trump saying that, hey, we're gonna spend this much, we're gonna put our troops here, we're gonna put our troops there, and you guys don't have to do anything. I think that's something that Trump would like. But I think we're a long way from that. But yeah, like I said, as far as the land, I don't think under any circumstance right now Zelensky's going to get that land back. Unfortunately for him, but that's just reality right now on the ground. It would take a lot more funding from the U.S. to do that, and that's just something that's completely off the table at this point. The Congress is not going to even bring that up for a vote, even if they, even if there's a few Republicans that wanted it.
And now you did note that the Washington Post was reporting that Trump is considering cutting off all military aid to Ukraine. I assume, similar to a lot of stuff with DOGE, this is money that's been earmarked by Congress, and he can't
Exactly.
necessarily do that. And it kind of echoes. I mean, didn't he have issues in this first presidency with what was viewed as him holding back money from Ukraine
Yeah,
in
it's just
exchange
it
for
was just
things?
yeah, this is exactly what he got impeached for. So, you know,
Yeah.
so I mean, I don't think he's going to be able to do that, but that's something that the Washington Post says they're considering. But I think that's much easier said than done. But the money that they appropriated for this year, runs out in September anyway, so it's probably not the end of the war. To him, it's probably like, all right, well, we'll continue going until September, and then after that, they get nothing, and that's legal for him to do, because after September, it's a new fiscal year, and Congress would have to appropriate another one, and if Congress isn't appropriated, then there's nothing to spend. So I think that's the line they'll take with that.
All right. Then where do we stand with Elon Musk and the federal workers here? Seems like they keep trying to move forward, and then it pulls back a little bit from who's going to get laid off and everything. So what's going on that backdrop, Carmine? Because obviously we want to keep an eye out on see how that could potentially impact the BLS moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot. Of course, Elon Musk, like last week, said that the total of asphalt federal workers has come up with 5 things they did this week. The agencies, a lot of some have put some pushback for security reasons, like the State Department, for example, saying, we can't give you 5 things we did because it's all confidential and so forth. So, but so they're getting a lot of pushback on this. The White House is reportedly writing a large amount of firings now. All of this is going on in the courts. There's several different cases. Some they won on, some they didn't. Right? They were able to fire the USAID employees, and that was a big deal on TV. Right? They showed everybody who lost their jobs in tears and so forth, and that's obviously not a good image if you're the president right there. Uh, but and uh, but there's other things where there's other folks that he wanted to fire where the courts blocked them so far, but those are going to get appealed too. So eventually all of this is going to go up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will decide who you can fire and who you can't. So uh, he said, "Ooh, it says Trump to meet today with Ukraine on next steps." Huh. On
Oh yeah.
meet no meet today on Ukraine next steps. So
Okay.
I don't think he's meeting with Ukraine. I think he's
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
It
That's a
sounds
big
like he's
difference
meeting with his
there.
officials on the next step. That was kind of a strangely worded headline, but anyway, yeah, I think that he's just meeting with his officials. But excuse me, but as far as Elon Musk, this is going to all go through the courts. There's some workers that were fired already that the courts allowed. Some that didn't, like I said, and it's going to continue to get appealed. This is going to be something we'll be talking about for a while. I think the legitimate way to do this, of course, is once like what Mike Johnson said was in September when they do the next fiscal year budget, say, hey, we're not going to pay these people, we're not going to pay this group, and so forth and so on. If they were able to do that, it's legitimate, and then everybody can go on their merry way, and they can fire the people that we're not funding. But doing it this way, it's going to be require court challenges.
Okay. State of the Union tomorrow, Carmine. As you mentioned earlier, well, not officially a State of the Union, but it'll be easier for people to understand it as such. So, what are you expecting from that? What do you think are going to be Trump's key talking points? Obviously, whether or not we get this deal with Mexico and Canada is going to loom large in the conversation. But when we come into the to our desks on Wednesday morning, the day after, what do you think the big buzz is going to be around the State of the Union?
And I think he's going to talk a lot about Doge. I think he's going to talk a lot about uh, the cost of living, and he's going to blame Biden for a lot of that, and he's going to talk a lot about what he's going to do on foreign policy. I expect this to be a very partisan speech. I expect the Republicans to be standing up and cheering almost for every 100% of what he says, and I expect the Democrats to be kind of sitting down on their hands for the vast majority of the speech. I think that.
Will Hakeem Jeffries rip it up at the end, a la
I don't.
Nancy
I'm going
Pelosi?
to say no. I think that kind of was that didn't really work out too well for them. But I'm going to say no on that. But it's right now. I think it's going to be a non-event. Basically, I think he's going to talk about a lot of things that he wants to do, and the things that he's going already did, and the things that a lot of this stuff already was talked about during the campaign. He's going to talk a lot about, I think, his the reconciliation bill. He's going to say, hey, we got to get this passed. I want all this stuff in one bill, and so forth, and the immigration and the border and energy and tax cuts and spending cuts. I think he's going to be very clear on the Medicaid deal, that this is fraud, waste, and abuse, and not hurting average Americans. Of course, but the way you view that is whoever you voted for, you have a different view on that. So that's kind of, I think that, but that's going to be his pitch. I think tomorrow. But I think for the markets, I think it's going to be pretty much a non-event. I think there's going to be most of the stuff he talks about are going to is stuff that we already knew from the campaign.
Okay, and the response is coming from who?
Yes, the Democratic response is coming from Senator Lisa Loughlin. She's from Michigan. She won a close race in 2024 to get reelected for another 6-year term. I think it's an interesting choice. Obviously,
Yeah, any read through to the 2028 ticket on it?
yeah, so I think she might be a possible VP selection. For a Democrat, whoever the Democrat wins the primary for. I think that she's definitely be on the top of the list for a VP selection. So I think that's kind of why she's doing this, to try to gain a little bit more of a foothold ahead of things. But I think she's going to be very critical on the Medicaid cuts. I think she's going to claim, like I said, it just depends on where you stand politically. But she's going to claim that these are going to hurt. They're going to hurt average Americans. She's going to be very clear on Doge, and I think it's going to be a very fiscally oriented response. I think it's to be very, very light on social issues and much more on fiscal issues such as Medicaid and Doge, and you're hurting the government workforce, and you're going to hurt the economy with the tariffs and so forth. I think that's going to be kind of her line of attack.
All right, Carmine. Did we leave any stones under? Quick question in feet. There's two questions that I got, Carmine, real fast.
Yeah.
One was asking about the air traffic controllers there, given the problems. Is there anything with the government shutdown that could impact that?
No, those are essential workers, and I hope that they remain essential. But yeah, uh, but yeah, yeah, those should be fine. I don't foresee any issue there. They actually, the Department of Transportation put out a press release saying they're going to spend more, hire more air traffic controllers. They're going to upgrade the systems and so forth. So I think that's something that obviously is needed after the tragedy in D.C. and a couple of other near misses that happened a couple of weeks ago. So
Okay. And the overall impact from a government shutdown, you got any thoughts on that?
yeah, I think that it's going to be small, because I don't think it's going to last a long time. I think when push comes to shove, they'll get in line. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what they consider essential, right? Because I think you're going to see Trump's Office of Management and Budget say, "Hey, a lot of this stuff that we don't like isn't quote unquote essential, but a lot of stuff the Democrats like, I'm sorry, a lot of stuff that we like is essential, but a lot of the stuff the Democrats like, such as foreign aid and so forth, is not essential." So I think there's going to be an interesting if there is a shutdown. I think that'll be interesting to see how the Democrats respond to that because it's kind of they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot if the government shuts down and a lot of the stuff that they want to be able to fund is not funded. So we'll see what happens with that.
All right. Well, Carmine, as per usual, greatly appreciate you coming on. I don't think the market liked what you had to say because we are slipping down near the lows. Critical support here at 59.40 in the S&P. So hopefully in the next 48 hours, we'll have some cheerier news for folks. But for now, a lot of headlines to keep an eye out on, and we'll have you on the red bat phone ready to go in case we need any updates on anything.
Yeah, so next week I'll be on vacation. So next show will be the 17th, and if the government shut down, we'll talk about all the ramifications.
Sounds good, Carmine. Appreciate it. You enjoy that well earned vacation there, and we will talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kevin.